Welcome. Welcome.
I don't have that much time, so I thought I'd tell you a story while I get ready to go to a friend's birthday brunch. Okay, I'm back. You didn't notice. So, story time. You, me, telling you story. It's a story. Many years ago, in mine and Mr. C's lives, where we lived in what is to be known as a duplex. It was actually like a quadplex, I guess you'd call it. Sorry, I ran back up the stairs. I'm out of breath. Many years ago, Mr. C and I lived in a quadplex. We were very, very young, little, tiny baby children. Mr. C, me, our cat Cliff, you met him. I don't know how to tell this story without being offensive. I just want you to understand the players that we had here. So, in our side of the quadplex, there was a couple that did a lot of heroin. We were friendly. We heard them fight a lot. They were always fighting. It was a blonde woman who did a lot more drugs than her boyfriend. We also had a roommate. We'll call him Anthony. One day, Mr. C and I go to visit his mom, who lived in a community not even 2 minutes away. We're visiting Mr. C's mom. We walk out to the car, and a raccoon just walks up to us, okay? Mr. C's mom lives in a gated community. We'd had different animals come up to us sort of randomly in the past because there's so many houses. So this raccoon comes up to us, and firstly, I'm a little freaked out because I've never met a raccoon in person before, and I don't want to be stupid and get hurt, but I was maybe 19 at this time. This raccoon walks up to me. He starts hugging my legs, and I'm just looking at Mr. C what is happening right now? I sit down on the ground, and the raccoon crawls into my lap, and he's just so sweet. And Mr. C and I are talking about where he could have come from. He has to be somebody's pet. He had to have gotten out of the house. I must look like someone he's familiar with. I had this laundry basket in my car, and I don't know how he's gonna react to me picking him up. So I scoop him up in the laundry basket, and we go to take him home. We call Mr. C's mom, and we say, "Oh my God, we just found a lost raccoon. It's somebody's pet. He came right up to us. He's so sweet." And she, of course, was like, "I don't know about that. I don't know anybody in this community that has a pet raccoon. That's really cool. Just be careful." So we go home, and as anyone would do, we call our neighbors over. We didn't even hang out. We didn't even hang out with them ever. So our roommate's there, the neighbors are there. And I would like to say, the blonde girl, it was rarely that she ever said anything of much depth. She would occasionally talk about
Making love to.
with her boyfriend, and that was really it, other than yelling and crying, which is very sad. But she was in rough shape. We'll move forward. We're inside. We're all just kind of sitting around looking at this guy. When we were at Mr. C's mom's house, he was just very friendly and loving, and he just wanted to hug me. And we thought maybe he just felt out of his element because we just taken him from a place that he, already was a little disoriented in to this entirely new place. He's just kind of walking around, and he keeps putting his head on his hands and sort of shaking his head and looking down, and he walks around, and then he looks up, and he's just sort of confused, and he just looked like he was having a really rough day at this point, which was strange because just 2 minutes prior, he was just really happy. Our cat Cliff comes out of the bedroom, and he looks at it and just immediately loses his mind, and we're like, "Calm down, bud, you're being crazy, okay? He's a nice guy. We've been hanging out with him. Everything's fine. He's good. Chill, trying to stick up for this guy." So we're all sitting around and we're watching him. And I don't remember what brought up the topic of rabies, but I do recall the blonde girl saying, "It's the calm before the storm." And it got me thinking. So 5 of us are seated on the couch, and I pull up a list on my phone of traits that you can expect to see, and the usual foaming at the mouth, aggressive outbursts. Like, this guy had done nothing to even suggest that he could possibly have rabies. And then it said overly affectionate, which he had done. But again, he's a lost pet raccoon. Like, he's confused, you know. And then the next one was confusion. And then we get to the bottom of the list. And the last item was seemingly depressed. And all 5 of us look up at this sad, confused creature. And my roommate screams, "He's seemingly depressed!" All 5 of us jump up on the couch. This raccoon has rabies. He's got rabies. There's no question. There is no doubt. He is rabid. That's why my cat freaked out. We're stupid. We're all in a panic. And of course, panicking around a rabid animal is not the thing to do, because then they get upset and they're already confused. They're already in pain. You don't want to freak them out more. So we're screaming. Worst possible thing to do at this moment. Everybody's trying to get as high up off the ground as they possibly can, which again isn't really going to help us if he starts to freak out, right? Like, he's a raccoon. He can get up. So my roommate and the boyfriend of next door end up grabbing the laundry basket, and they put it over him, and they just sort of scoot him out the door. And once it gets outside, they pull the laundry basket off, throw it into the house, and slam the door shut. And we all watch out the window as he crawls away. I would like to note, I was 19 and I made all of the wrong choices. I was very young, very stupid. I would never do any of this again. I've told this story many times to prevent this from happening in the future, but that's the worst thing we could have done. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Looking back, it causes me physical pain when I think about the fact that I didn't call anyone. I just didn't know better at the time. I just didn't know better. I was young and I was stupid, obviously. Many fewer raccoons have rabies than you expect. If you see a raccoon minding his own business, chances are he doesn't have rabies. We just happened to come across the one that did have rabies, and we brought him into our home. Did you know that rabies can go dormant in your body? It's been documented as long as 8 years. Rabies is absolutely terrifying. It's so scary. My understanding is that once you're symptomatic, you're pretty much done for. Basically, you don't even know who you are anymore. You don't know anyone that loves you or cares about you. There's no comfort. And that's why a lot of times animals will come up to humans, because they're just looking for some sort of comfort because they're dying and they have no idea what to do. They don't have the same survival skills that they did when they were rationally thinking. Just know a nice, healthy, happy wild animal is not likely to come up to you looking for love and affection. They might come up and eat out of your hand if you have food, but they're not likely to come up and hug you unless they have something seriously wrong with them. Odds are, if a raccoon walks up to you at your mother-in-law's house and hugs your leg, he's got rabies. Since I'm telling you the story about rabies, I went to a bat expo. I put on way too much blush. Bats are another animal that people often have a stigma around. They could be rabid. Oh, they could have rabies. Well, in the world, studies show that only 0.02% of bats have rabies, okay? 0.02. That's 0.2%, okay? Don't just assume that every raccoon you see, every bat you see, every possum you see has rabies. Do you know what possums do, man? Possums are the best. I love possums. I love raccoons and I love bats. I love them all. They eat so many bugs. I don't know what we would do without them. And bats, some of them are pollinators. They go in little flowers to get the nectar out, and they come out all fuzzy and just covered in pollen. They're so freaking cute. Does this look horrible? The blush, everything is bad. Oh, my friends are here. All right, so my friends are here. I have to go. That's my story about bringing home a rabid raccoon. Raccoons are good. Bats are good. Possums are good. Rabies is bad. Thank you. I don't know why I keep doing that. It's weird. I'm sorry. I love you. Bye.